Welcome everyone to another Maine SBDC webinar. My name is Kelsey and I'm with the Maine State Office of the Small Business Development Centers. And we are joined today by the very talented Jenny Green of Fisher Green Creatives, and she's going to be going over a highlight of Pinterest. So I feel like, when I learned about Pinterest, I thought it was like homeschool moms. And then I realized quickly that I was one segment and that the rest of the world was also included on Pinterest. And so this is going to help you have a base understanding of what it is, what you can do. The evolution of the e-commerce aspect of Pinterest has really blown up over the last couple of years. So that will be very helpful for your small business as well. We do anticipate the presentation taking our full time. So we want to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have to jump off right at noon, we completely understand. If you can stick around, feel free to. However, any questions that you have that are not answered, make sure you add those into the chat. We'll add your questions into the chat along the way, like normal. But if for some reason we can't get to all of the questions, Jenny has very graciously offered to follow up with answers to those questions via email later this week. So if you add those to the chat, I'll save those and send them over to Jenny after the event. And we will get those answers back out at some point this week. You will receive another follow-up email from me anyway, probably later today, that will include a link to the recording and the slides and all that, but anticipate those questions taking us just like a little bit longer. There's a squirrel on my porch right now yelling at my cat, so sorry about that. I hope you can't hear that part. Otherwise, just use that chat feature to introduce yourself. Let us know maybe where you're zooming in from, what type of business you're in. If you have a website you'd like to share, feel free to introduce yourself through that. Like I said, you'll receive a couple follow-up emails from me, one with the presentation and the links, and then later on, we'll make sure we get answers to any questions. And otherwise, I think we're all set to hand it over to Jenny.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for being here today. I'm really excited to talk to you about the social media platform Pinterest. Hopefully everyone here has a basic understanding of what it is, but not to worry if you don't. I'm going to go into as much detail as possible, and we're going to be covering a lot of information today. And here's the outline, just so you know what to expect over the course of the next hour. We're going to go over the basics of getting started on Pinterest. We're going to talk about e-commerce, Pinterest strategy, how to create boards and pins, and some final tips before we wrap up. And again, if you're fairly new to Pinterest, this is the presentation for you. Also, as Kelsey said, this presentation will be recorded, and so later on, if you need to review any of the slides or the information, it'll be available there. Also, I should mention that today's presentation is really going to focus on using Pinterest through the desktop or your laptop. The Pinterest platform does have a really great app that you can use on your mobile version. And I encourage you to explore that later, but for today's conversation, we're really going to use it from a desktop version. So let's start with the basics, the what, the why, and the how. First of all, it's really important to know, just like Kelsey said, that Pinterest is not just for recipes and crafts and for the moms, the stay-at-home moms. It's one of the fastest growing social media channels for influencing buying decisions across industries, from retail to B2B. Pinterest basically works for anyone who has something to sell. So, what is it? It's a way to organize your internet finds. Millions of people, i.e. your potential customers, use it as a way to organize internet finds by pinning information onto their boards. It's from being a digital corkboard to providing inspiration. Real people with real buying power turn to Pinterest as a way to keep track of their digital discoveries. So in other words, they're using the internet and they're saving information to Pinterest to keep track of it. In a nutshell, Pinterest essentially has two components, boards and pins. Boards are where you save and organize all of your pins, literally a digital bulletin board. They also help your audience easily browse and explore your ideas and products by putting pins into logical categories. In another analogy, if you were to have a filing cabinet, think of the board as the file folders in which to file relevant paperwork, i.e. the pins. So you can see my little photo here, a mental image of what Pinterest actually is. You have digital corkboards that you are putting information into. And we'll talk a little bit more here in a bit about the different brand boards, topic boards, and interest boards. To get a better visual of those, instead of my little corkboard analogy, this is what it actually looks like. And there are essentially two ways to view boards: the boards you create and the ones that are created by others. On this slide is an example of what your own boards will look like once you get going on Pinterest. Of course, it'll have your own titles and your own pins, of course. So what you'll do once your account is set up, and we'll get into that in just a minute, is you'll click on your little avatar here in the corner. You'll go to Saved, and you'll see all of your different boards listed here. This is what it looks like when you're viewing others' boards. To get to this view, you'll click on a little magnifying glass that's not here because I've already typed in a word for the sake of this presentation, but you'll type in a subject matter that you'd like to explore. Then it'll give you the option to click drop-down menu here to click on boards, and then you can see a variety of different boards that will populate around the search topic. Another way to see boards that other people create is to hover right over here where it says business, and a little drop-down menu that will come up that shows your home feed. Click on that, and again, you'll get another variation of seeing boards created by other people. Pins are virtual sticky notes. Again, these are the ones that the content that you'll add to the boards that I just showed you. If you have a piece of digital content like a website or photo or blog post you don't want to forget, you'll pin it. And that's what users are doing across the internet. As a business, when you create pins, your own pins that are either branded or saved from another site, you give your customers the opportunity to save your information. It has basically a virtual effect. Excuse me, a ripple effect is what I should say, so that you pin and then they see it and then they can pin it and then your information travels exponentially. Just like with boards, you'll essentially have two views of pins, the ones you create, and like the ones seen here, and the ones that others create. So this is a snapshot from my own Pinterest profile, my business account. I have a board called Color Palettes, and you'll see here that I have a bunch of different pins that I've saved to this board. If I click on the pin that I've saved, this is the information that populates, and the person who created this pin, this was saved from someone else, has included a lot of really helpful information that I want to remember. And so that's why I put it on that particular board. This is a view of other pins. Simply type in the topics like we did for the boards, adjust the little drop-down menu here to all pins, and then you can see what populates by other people. You can also do the same thing from the business home feed. So again, if you go to business up here, a little drop-down menu will pop up and you can click on the home feed and you'll be able to populate the same information and do a variety of different searches. Of course, I picked marketing as a sample for today. And notice what happens when I click on these different pins. So for example, I clicked on what makes up a brand, and this window is what opens up. So there's an image, a title, some information. I can see what people are saying about that particular pin. And it caught my eye because I like the makeup of this particular visual. Now, when I click on the pin next to this, it actually, I hover over it and it turned a dark color, and it gave me the option to click on it to straight to the website. It didn't open up the same way that this one did because of the way that the Squarespace set up this particular pin. And we're going to get into that in a little bit, but there are different ways to set up pins so that different actions happen when you're using Pinterest for your business. Now, the why. So why use Pinterest? So we kind of talked a little bit about what it is and how the platform works, the boards and the pins, but the bottom line is that there are 478 plus million users on Pinterest. It's a lot of people. It's also the #2 source of all referral traffic, which basically means that it's the #2 place on the entire internet that sends traffic to other people's websites. And this is very true for small businesses and for our own client base. We've seen Pinterest work wonders for driving traffic to our websites. The other important statistic to note is that Pinterest sales usually result in an average of $50 or more, which is higher than any other social media platform. So compared to Pinterest compared to Instagram or Facebook, Pinterest outperforms in terms of actual sales dollars than any of the other channels. So why? Again, we're using Pinterest to stay competitive, to become more discoverable, to engage with your customers. It's a different way to connect with them. Pinterest can also be inspirational for you as a business owner to come up with ideas and things that you want to share and provide value back to your customer base. It helps you build your brand image. And then another really important point is that the content is very evergreen, which essentially means that once you make content on Pinterest, as long as the content itself doesn't expire, it grows and grows and grows for you. Unlike Twitter, for example, if you put out a tweet, it disappears pretty quickly. You're not going to see that one again. On Pinterest, though, it has this power of overperforming the longer that it's on there. For example, let's say you run a car detailing shop. If you pin a really helpful article on how to deep clean your car's console, that pin will likely gain some serious traction over time because the content doesn't expire. So it has the potential to grow and grow and grow as people repin it, they really enjoy it and find it helpful and share it to their boards and save it for future reference. Now, my favorite part of using Pinterest, particularly for our clients, is the value it provides for search engine optimization, which is what SEO stands for. This basically means that Pinterest content shows up high in search results because so many people are using it and because of the really powerful algorithms behind the platform. And this goes beyond Pinterest users. Google sources Pinterest for a lot of its search results. So you're getting a kind of 2-for-1, if not 3-for-1, when you factor in Bing or Yahoo and some of the other big search engines. But Pinterest really is a powerful SEO driver, helping your site rank both on Pinterest and off Pinterest. So how do you work Pinterest? Users primarily do 6 things. They create boards, create pins, follow others, save pins, discover new content, and click on links. So next up, we're going to go into more detail about how you as a small business can make these actions work to your advantage. So let's get started. So there are 2 ways, if you haven't already, to get started on Pinterest. First of all, I want to point out that it really is important to have a business account on Pinterest. Not only is it a violation of Pinterest policy to use a personal account for business, it also limits the opportunity to use some of the business features. This impacts performance and discoverability, which of course you want. So these are the 2 options of getting started. You can create a business account from scratch, and I'm going to go into the 2 ways to do that. And then you can also convert your personal account to a business account. So let's talk about that just quickly. So from scratch, you'll simply go to this URL. It's not Pinterest.com. You actually have to put that business in front of it. So it's business.pinterest.com. You'll click on the sign up button, one of them, and then it'll walk you through the process of getting going. If you already have a personal account and you want to make signing in easier, you can also start from scratch by logging into your personal account and linking a brand new business account. So you'll follow these steps. And again, I won't hover here too long. You can come back to this and see it in the recording or in the slides that will be emailed later. But these are the steps that you'll follow to link your personal account, if you already have that, to create a new business account from scratch. Next, if you already have a personal account and you've kind of been using it for business, or most of your pins are about business related topics, and you want to just use that content to promote your business and to transfer over, you can certainly do that. And these steps here on this sheet will tell you how to go through that process. I would recommend going through and doing a pretty thorough cleanup so that you don't have irrelevant content, or that you make sure that it's appropriate, and really just kind of comb through it and get it cleaned up for your professional presentation. The nice thing too about converting a personal account to a business account is that later, if you decide that you don't want to use Pinterest for your business, you can always convert back to a personal account. However, if you start with a business account from scratch, you can't switch that to a personal. So after deciding which way you're going to set up your business account, you'll be led through a series of creating and optimize your profile. Start with your login details, and then you'll begin building your profile. And so these are the profile specs that you'll want to be familiar with. And even if you already have an existing account, or if you're just starting, you want to make sure that you've optimized with these in mind. So for example, your profile picture, the dimension should be 165 pixels by 165 pixels. This just helps it present a little more clearly across all devices. You'll want to make sure that you pay attention to what your display name is versus your username. The display name is what will be shown on the page when people are looking at your profile. The username is what's included in the URL of your Pinterest profile. Usually they match, but they don't have to if for some reason you need them to be different. The bio, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, will have a minimum or limit, of 160 characters. Now, if you already have a Pinterest account, you can find this section under the settings. And again, this is a kind of a half screenshot. So the settings will be over here. You'll click on your little avatar. It'll have a drop down. You'll click on settings, and then you can come to this section here. These words right here are actually a live menu, and we're going to go through a couple of these here in just a second. And by the way, I created a sample business profile on Pinterest for this occasion. So I'll be switching back and forth through some examples of my official Fisher Green Creative business account. And then this account, which is kind of a fake account just for sample purposes today. And I cleverly named it Jen and an E, just so that you really know who I am and where I am. Profile specs continued. So you can add a cover to your profile. However, if you don't add a single photo or a collage or whatever design you create, it will just pull from your pins. If you don't have any pins, which is this account right now because I just started it for this presentation, you'll see it's just left blank, but eventually it will start to populate as you create pins, which is what you see here with the official account. So tips for writing a great bio. Even if you already have an account, you want to definitely go back and check this out because this is really important for your business to really seize the opportunity to provide an explanation of who you are and what you do, showcase your unique personality. And then this is a great opportunity to throw in those SEO-friendly keywords. So things that you want to be found for. This is a great place to put it. It'll help you populate in search results. Here's a great sample. I really like this one because she gets right to the point. It's clever and kind of intriguing. She also has a great call to action where she says, follow along on Instagram. She's left her cover photo to capture her really cool pins. And then when I followed her on, and I took a peek at her other profiles, this all matched and was consistent with her online digital presence. And so when you're going through and branding your business profile, you want to make sure that it is consistent with your brand strategy. So does it match your website? Does it match your other social media channels? And this is a nice opportunity to really stay consistent with those elements. So we're going to continue to set up your account. And again, even if you already have one, these are good steps to make sure that you go back through. You'll really want to go through each of these menu items, making sure that you fill them out as thoroughly as possible. It's pretty self-explanatory. Certainly, again, if you have specific questions, throw those in the chat, and I'll be happy to follow up with any details. But one of these menu items that I really want to focus on today, and this will be pretty important for the e-commerce piece in particular, is is this menu item of claiming your other channels. This gives you the opportunity to integrate your website, your Instagram channel, Etsy if you have it, a YouTube channel, and then your e-commerce. Now, Shopify has an expanded relationship with Pinterest, which is why it's the only e-commerce solution that you'll see here. And we're going to talk about e-commerce here next, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. But the claiming your website piece, that does require some adding of meta descriptions or meta title, I think, tag to your website on the back end. So it does take a little bit of technical experience to make that happen. This link right here at the bottom will go through step by step on how to do that. And particularly if you have a website developer or maintenance person that works on your site, they'll be able to do that easily for you. But again, this is the self-help article that will show you how to claim the website, and that will apply to everyone. Everyone should go through that process. Okay, so speaking of e-commerce, let's go ahead and dive right into that. So the whole reason for using e-commerce is to sell your products and services online. On Pinterest, shopping is made easier by way of product pins. So when integrated with your website, product pins pull all of the key details for you: pricing, availability, the name, the description, and shoppers can buy or at least save later with a click of a button right from Pinterest. Now, if you don't have e-commerce and this doesn't apply to you at this moment, not to worry. I'm going to zip through a couple things here, but I am still going to show you later how you can still tag products and you can still sell your services even if you don't have the e-commerce connection. But essentially, this is an example of a product pin. You can see the image, it's pulled the pricing, the description, and it allows the viewer to shop right there. So product pins, which are specific to e-commerce, pull data from two sources. One is called a catalog, one is called a rich pin. Rich pins are kind of a next level of catalogs, kind of catalogs on steroids, if you will. And we're not going to cover that today, but if you would like more information and you feel pretty savvy with your e-commerce setup, I would definitely check out the article on rich pins and explore applying for that, because they really are helpful for making the shopper experience a little more real time. The information stays up to date, up to the minute, whereas with catalogs, it's pulling a little less frequently. However, the catalogs are a little simpler. So what are catalogs? Catalogs are basically just the data source where Pinterest is pulling the information about your specific products. Of course, you need a Pinterest business account. You need that claimed website that we've talked about. You have to have a website that meets the merchant guidelines, which essentially is the bare minimum of products for sale, a way to check out, a clear shipping policy, a clear privacy policy, things like that. And you can find those guidelines right in Pinterest. But the data source is loaded either directly from an e-commerce website. So if you have something like Shopify, it'll do that for you. Or you can manually upload that data source from like an Excel spreadsheet. But the catalog is just important for you to have in place and to make that connection if you want those product pins that are shoppable. Now, speaking of Shopify, because of that expanded relationship between the Pinterest platform, they have the most straightforward connection. But again, don't worry if you don't have Shopify, if you're not using e-commerce, there's still plenty of ways to sell your products. But if you do have Shopify, you definitely want to take advantage of those integration. And here's a couple of resources just for additional reading if you don't already have it set up. They're very helpful step by step in how to get that going. Also, Pinterest doesn't highlight it, but they do have additional integrations that they do officially partner with. They're listed here. But not to worry, again, if you're not on any of these and not on Shopify, other platforms like WooCommerce have plugins that you can add. They do the job a little less officially, but there are absolutely other options for all e-commerce platforms. And lastly, with the e-commerce section, these are a couple of additional resources that I would definitely recommend checking out. This is a little more information about those catalogs. This is a little bit more about just shopping on and setting up your shop on Pinterest in general. Okay, so we're kind of zipping through these pieces, but let's move right into Pinterest strategy. So set up your account, you claimed your website, you have the e-commerce component set up if it's applicable. So now what do you actually do? So what's happening? Where do you start? What is there beyond product pins that could be really beneficial for you and your business? So first, you want to identify your goals. What do you actually want to get out of Pinterest? Like I can tell you all the things that you could get out of it, but it's also up to you to really figure out what you want. There's so many ways to take advantage, from boosting engagement on your content, increasing followers, improving your brand awareness, driving sales, and just having fun. All of these are great reasons for your business to be on Pinterest, but it's up to you to really pick which ones really apply to you. And then also, of course, which ones you can measure for success. So this is where you want to identify the metrics. So if you want to boost engagement, and that's one of your goals, then you would identify, how do you measure that? Is it the number of clicks? Is it the number of times people save it? What counts as a metric for you? And so once you know why you're using it, you identify those metrics. And then what this does is validate, if you track over time, your efforts to show that you actually have a return. Of course, I'm a little partial to Pinterest, and I would be surprised if you didn't have a really great return. But sometimes you can identify some gaps in performance by keeping track of those metrics, and it just allows you the opportunity to improve. You might find out, for example, that videos are really the way to go for your brand. And so you can save yourself some time and energy by not doing as many still pins and just picture pins. You can focus on video, or vice versa. So how do you find those metrics? There's this in your Pinterest account. At the very top menu, there'll be a drop-down box called Analytics, and you click there. For the sake of time today, we won't really be able to go into a lot of detail about those analytics, but I encourage you to explore those and find out what you have access to. There's also a really great link right here that will walk you through how to pick the best metrics, where to find them, and what to do with them. So definitely check out that article for more information on those metrics. For me personally, I actually use an Excel spreadsheet. And if you've been to any of my other presentations, you might have seen this already, but this is my way of tracking the 3 categories that I have identified as really important. One is reach, where I'm trying to reach as many people as possible and reach the right people. And that's this section up here. And I keep metrics for followers, because that gives me an idea of how many people I'm reaching. That you can identify other ones that you feel are appropriate for this. And I've included all of my different social media channels here, but if you're just using Pinterest, you could make this a little simpler by just having the Pinterest metrics here. The next group, a category that I really focus on when I'm measuring metrics is the engagement. This might be, again, I just mentioned those saves or shares or clicks, things that I want action on my social media content. So I keep track of it here. And I always start with the baseline. And then each month I just make a note of where those numbers are going. So that, again, at a very simplistic level, I can see, what's trending. If I see a real dip or no movement, then I know where I need to pay more attention. And then, of course, the conversions are the third pillar of those marketing those segments. And conversions, of course, carry a little more weight. I want people to actually buy or actually sign up or actually do something that gives me that next level of relationship with that particular customer, consumer, client. And again, feel free to use this or some version of this, but there are also, again, the metrics in Pinterest in particular will be found in that analytics from the top menu from your main dashboard. So next, I really recommend reviewing your audience. Like really know who it is you're trying to target on Pinterest. In general, as with any marketing campaign, it's really important to know who you're trying to sell to. But it might be with Pinterest that there's a really particular segment that you're trying to reach and that you've identified is very active on Pinterest. A good example might be a female under the age of 40 in the US with an income between $50,000 and $75,000 a year. That would be one, but trust me, there are plenty of men and plenty of older and younger people using Pinterest. But knowing those segments is really helpful, because not every pin or board should be for every one of your customers, but every one of your customers should have a board or pin that would be relevant to them. So you really want to make sure that you've created content that will reach all of those different segments. And a really fun exercise is to follow this link and go through a process called developing a buyer persona. And that's basically helping you find out and identify who those people are that might be active, and particularly on Pinterest, but then also just in general. So that article is a really nice resource. So keeping with the developing editorial content and planning out what you're going to put on Pinterest, I use an editorial calendar. I have two versions. This is the overview, and I typically put this together in 12-month increments, because I like to see a bird's eye view of what's coming over the next 12 months. It helps me plan, it helps me get ready. There's some non-negotiables, things like Mother's Day. Pretty much every small business is going to do something around Mother's Day, and so I know that it's coming. What can I maybe do in January when it's quiet and a little dead, that I can go ahead and start getting ready to be more prepared and plan ahead? In this particular example of an editorial overview, again, just a simple Excel spreadsheet. I also include the types of blog posts that I might be publishing, the kinds of newsletters, different reminders, maybe a monthly theme, and then of course any promotions or sales that I might want to implement into the strategy. And of course, this is just the 6 months on the next sheet. I would add the next 6 months and so on and so forth. And so then from there, this is the second part of that editorial calendar. I break it down into 30, 60, and 90-day increments. And this is where I really get granular. I add in like what kinds of categories for that particular day based on the overview. Again, if we're talking Mother's Day, I might type in Mother's Day in the category. I'm going to definitely do a Facebook post, and I'm going to do a Pinterest pin that's just on a general board on my profile, for example. So something like that, but I'm just planning it out here on a granular level, so that again I can plan ahead and feel a little more cohesive and intentional in my content development instead of just creating pins just to be creating them. So for example, a way that I might walk through this development of the content, let's pretend I'm a Better Fitness company. And of course, this is fake, but I might start with some ideas for boards. The first one might be a brand board. The second one might be a topic board. And the next one might be an interest board. And then for the sake of brainstorming, I'm talking about, listing out like what's going to be included on there. Just again, get the wheels spinning. This is really identifying what's going to be happening. And then of course, once this is established, you take it to that granular level of actually creating the boards and the pins. And we're going to go through the step-by-step process of how to do those boards and pins here in just a minute. Just a couple quick more things about developing that editorial strategy. Another way to break down your planning, this for me works a little bit better because I am creating a board with the name, and then I'm being very specific about the pins. So for this one, for example, this might be how I would create one for my business, board about email marketing. I'd have one pin about how to use MailChimp, and the source would be an original website blog post on our website. I might create a pin about how to use Constant Contact. This might be a pin from the Constant Contact website. The next pin might be how to use ActiveCampaign, which is another email platform. And then here I might create a video, a how-to video that I either make or that I find online that I repin to this particular email marketing board. So again, just a couple of examples of how to get that content strategy going, how to get organized, and the ways to lay it out so that you have a pretty clear hierarchy, and you'll just of your boards and your pins, because you'll just keep repeating this process, and you can have hundreds and hundreds of boards, or you can keep it a little more simplistic and only have 4 or 5 and then just be very detailed on each of those boards. But laying it out ahead of time and identifying your hierarchy will again give you some direction and feel a little more intentional instead of just posting or pinning to be pinning. If you need some inspiration, I've listed a bunch of different kinds of posts and pins that you could use. These are great for boards and the specific pins. So feel free to use these as a resource. Okay, so how do we actually do those boards and pins? So I'm going to start with the boards, of course, and I'm going to go step by step. It's not in video format, but I'm hoping that by being able to reference the screenshots, it'll be easier to go back and line it up as you go through the process yourself, either while we're doing this or offline if you come back to this video presentation later. So the first thing we'll start with is creating your board. You'll simply click on this little avatar up here. This will bring you to your main dashboard. And then you're going to have the primary way to start a board from scratch. And this is right here, this little plus sign. It'll give you the option to click on board, and then you're off and running. You'll be given the option to name the board next, and this is where it's helpful to have your content planned out. For this particular sample, I named it Pinterest Marketing. I've typed that in here, and then I clicked Create. It brings you to this screen here. You'll click on these three little dots here, click on Edit Board, and this will give you the opportunity to optimize the board. And you'll see that there's a couple of other drop-down menu items for future reference. So if you wanted to come back and archive this board or share it or do any number of things, those three little dots are where you'll be able to make those changes and perform those tasks. So when you clicked on that edit board, those three little dots, this screen comes up, and these are the specs that you'll need to be familiar with. So you'll name the board, it's 50 characters, the description, you have up to 500 characters. Again, this is a great opportunity to use those keywords. What do you want this board to be found if someone were to be searching? And there's no exact science to the keyword and SEO descriptions, but I will cover a few suggestions and helpful tips a little bit later. But again, because all search algorithms are becoming more sophisticated, you really want to focus on writing for humans. So the search words and the terms are really helpful. So the more descriptive you can be, the more likely you are to improve your SEO, your search engine and search engine results. But you're also, again, Pinterest and Google will see right through anything that's like overstuffed with keywords. So keep it genuine, keep it authentic, but it is a great opportunity to put those keywords in and those descriptions so that you can improve your chances of being found. Also, a quick tip, you can keep boards secret, which means that only you would see them. They won't be public. So you could click this if you wanted to get the board created and test it, make sure it looks okay before you actually go live. And then there's a little option here that got cut off in the screenshot, but it's personalization. And if you check that, then it basically registers this content as something that you're interested in. And then your news feed or your home feed, and when you're searching, will be a little more relevant because it's identifying what you're interested in and things that you're sharing about. So I generally tend to keep that clicked unless it's a topic that I really just don't want more information about and I don't want it showing up on my newsfeed, and then I'll uncheck that part. The other way to create a board is during the process of creating a pin, which we'll get to in just a minute. But for now, just remember that when you're creating a pin, you can actually create a board at the same time. So if you're in the process of creating this great pin and then you realize you don't have the right board set up, don't panic. You can do that here. It's pretty straightforward. You'll just create your pin. And again, we'll get to that in just a minute. You'll click here to show which board you want to pin it to, and it'll give you the option of creating the board, or you can pick one that's already established. So if you go that route in that scenario where you've created a board from while creating that pin, you want to make sure that you go back to that board and optimize it, because what will happen is it will take you straight back after you name it. It'll take you straight back to creating the pin. So navigate to name it, create your pin, and then navigate to your little avatar so you get to your main dashboard. You'll see the board that was just created. Click on the little pencil icon, and it'll give you the option to edit that particular board. And this is what will show up. And in this case, because I don't have any pins, it gives me the option to create a board cover. But generally speaking, if you already have pins on that particular board, you'll just select from the pins that are available on an image that's already there on the board. Now, we've got the boards. So those are a couple of different ways to create those boards. This is how we'll go through adding pins to those boards. The most straightforward and simplest way is to simply save one. And when you're saving, this is generally just off of Pinterest from somebody else's profile or from your, again, going back to that business link in the top corner, clicking on the home feed, you'll get a bunch of different content. And this is my new account that I created. So there's some random stuff here because I don't really have any search algorithms going on that have brought up relevant information. So what I did do is type in marketing so that I could, you'll see here, so that it would bring up a little bit more relevant information for now. But I typed in the marketing, and again, this brings up pins so that I can save these pins who were created by other people to my own boards. And what you'll do is you'll simply hover over the pin. It'll bring up this little box, this little red save option. A little drop-down menu will come up, and then you can pick which board you want to save it to. Again, it gives you the option to create one from scratch, which we just learned how to do, or you can select an existing one. And then that's it. If you're not sure if you want to save it, you can always click on the pin to expand it, and then it'll give you that exact same option to save from the open pin. These are just the high-level pins from the news feed. So again, a couple of different ways to save. But once you've saved it, that's it. You've got your first pin on whatever board you choose. So before we move into how to create original pins and pins from websites, it's just important to note your pin specs because you'll want to have these ready before you get pinning. It's important to, particularly with the image, having that ready. And these are the best image sizes. You'll see the optimal one is 1000 by 1500 pixels. In other words, just use that portrait mode on your iPhone or with professional photographers, make sure that they're thinking of that portrait mode as well. You can have long ones. These are good for infographics. The square is generally reserved when you're sharing from a third party. So for example, if you were sharing from Instagram over to Pinterest, that's when the square is most used. Not to say you can't have specs outside of this, it just means that they won't be as optimized on different devices and in different feeds. So again, this is for optimal viewing experience for your viewers. There's also the video option. So if you're getting into video, you want to make sure that you're, again, paying attention to these optimal aspect ratios for creating your video pins. And then, of course, knowing that when you get to the pin creation, you'll have a character limit on the title. You'll have these character limits on the description. And then your pins will have the option to add some alt text. And alt text is something we'll get into here in just a minute. And then again, just making note that you're using those optimal sizes for creating the visual assets. So very similar process to creating the boards. You'll have two main options. One is from the top corner here, create, and it'll drop down. And then again, from the bottom where you can pick. And there's two different kinds of pins that you can select from these two menus. It's just the regular pin and then an idea pin. So the idea pin, just to go into a little bit more detail about the difference between those, is kind of like the new version of what used to be the Pinterest story pin. It's kind of like Instagram stories, but now Pinterest has made a bunch of upgrades and it's a little bit more cohesive with their platform. I personally like it better. It has a lot of new features, very cool. It's a little more complex because you have lots of different opportunities to add different kinds of content to one particular pin. So I'm going to go through how to do that, and then we'll go through the simpler way of just creating a regular pin. So again, this is the idea pin, and the idea around the idea pin is that you're putting together a bigger story around a particular concept. So just for example, if you were putting together a recipe to share with your followers, you could add here the 20 different images of the different stages of building the recipe. You'll then go in and add the text and the steps. You could also use this like for a how-to. It could just be a display. It's really just a comprehensive way for you to add up to 20 images or videos around one particular pin idea. So it's almost like its own board in and of itself, except that it's in pin format. And I'll show you a little bit more about that as we move through how to do these idea pins. So the very first thing after you select the idea pin, you add your materials, your digital assets here, which hopefully you prepared ahead of time. You're in the design, there's a little bit, it's hidden behind the screenshot, but you'll click next and it will bring you, this is the bottom menu that we're following, it'll bring you to the design section. Here you can adjust your pictures, rearrange the order, you can crop and adjust the images as you need to. But before clicking next, because we're in the design section here, you want to then jump over to this little menu here and you want to click on text. And so this will bring up your text, and here's where you can add text overlay. You can do a few more adjustments, some highlights, do some fun graphics, just remembering that whatever text you put onto each of your images, that's the order. The order of these images is the order of the display text. So again, back to that recipe example, if you were creating a recipe, you would want the overlay text to be in chronological order. If it's more of a display or portfolio type of idea pin, then the text overlay may not matter, or the order of the photos might not matter. But again, just thinking through and knowing that these photos and the text are going to populate at the end in chronological order. The next one is clicking on the background, which I didn't put here. You can just change the color of the background of the pen if you need to. You'll click, so click that and just see if anything applies to you, and then click next. And this will bring you again following this bottom menu. We're now finishing up. You can put on the finishing touches. This is essentially optimizing the pen, adding that title, selecting the board that you want to put the idea pin on, and then a new quick little feature is tagging. This allows you to tag this particular idea pin. The public will not see those tags, but what it does do is help with search results. So this is a really cool feature because it gives you the opportunity to find categories and key phrases to help your searchability around these idea pins. Now, again, before hitting publish, there's two sections to this finishing up section. One was the basics. Now we're going to add a list. So once you click on that add a list, here's where you get to add the fun stuff. So if you were putting together a craft project, for example, for your followers, this is where you would identify the level of ease of this particular project, and you would put the supplies. It's a way to put ingredients in. So if this was that recipe I was referring to, then you would put the ingredients here in the step-by-step. Also, again, if this was just a portfolio or kind of like a gallery type idea pen, then you would just put some notes if applicable. So then you click finish once you've got it all polished up. And I have to apologize, I didn't actually do a real idea pin. I ran out of time, but this hopefully will at least give you the step-by-step idea of how you can use these to your advantage. So you click the publish, this fun little page will come up where it's warming up the pen machine, and you can just sit and wait and see how hot it will actually get. So that is an idea pin. So it's kind of the next level of Pinterest pinning. Creating a normal pin, quote unquote, is a little more straightforward. So this is where we, again, go back to those two options. You'll remember this create drop down. You'll remember the plus sign. You just create a pin. Within this particular pin or this section, once you select on it, you still have two more choices. One is here, create a pin, or save from a website. And we're going to go with just create a pin for right now, and then we'll do a quick sample of the saving from a website as well. And so this I actually did a real pin for, and you can see here that I've added an image that I created with Canva. I named the pin I also added the description and then the alt text. I just want to make a quick note about that, that is to use to describe the image that is reflected in the pin. That is for screen readers. So any visually impaired users who are using screen readers will know what the image looks like. You should not just copy and paste the pin description because the screen reader will already pick up on the text from the pin. But what we want to do is help with accessibility, and anyone who has trouble seeing would be able to understand what the image reflects. For this particular example of a pin, I used a blog post that I already had published on our business website. I added the new graphic. I put in a link to the blog post. I used some text from the blog post as the description. I renamed it just for searchability purposes. Again, just kind of highlighting what I want this pin to be found around. And then just pointing out that there's a couple of different options here. You can click the edit, that little pencil there, to add additional text overlay and do some additional editing within Pinterest. If you'd like, you can also click on this little create a carousel, and this gives you the opportunity to add a few more pictures to this particular pin if you'd like. For sake of simplicity today, I did not do any of those, but those are features that you should explore and test out from time to time to see if they improve your performance or give you a new way to display your particular products and services. The other great feature here is to either publish immediately or to schedule for later dates. So if you're creating content in bulk, you might create 20 pins in one go, and then you can spread those out over the course of the next a few days, weeks, months, whatever fits your editorial calendar. Again, you'll pick your board that you want to apply this particular pin to, and then you click publish. You'll be taken to this screen where you can do a couple of different things. You can promote it. And again, we're not going to have time today to go into promotions, but what you might want to do is just take a quick peek and see the live pin. And this is what it looks like to the viewers. Next, now I mentioned that you can promote your products and services without e-commerce or without integrating your e-commerce solution. So again, just making sure that you've claimed your website. Here are a couple of quick steps on how you can still tag products and services in your pins without those e-commerce connections, or even with them, you can still tag products. But this is a great workaround if you really want to make sure that your users have access to things that you're selling. So again, you'll go back to that creating just a normal pin, create the pin, you'll add your digital asset, and then before adding any text or any of these details, you'll notice that there's this menu here that's added a little product tag. And so you'll want to click on that little tag there to give you the option of adding basically more information about a specific product that's related to this pin. So what happens when you click on that little tag, it brings you to this screen and it gives you this option to click here. And once you click there, it will bring you to the option of picking a product that you've already pinned about on your profile. And you have a number of different options if you've done a lot of pinning. If you haven't yet, then there won't be anything listed here. If you do use product pins that we talked about in the e-commerce section, those will also show up here, and you can pick straight from your product pins. And again, tagging the product just shows that in that picture, that specific product is there, and you can tag, I think, up to 24 products in one photo. So let's say you're a grocery store and you want to take a picture of your produce aisle, you can tag up to 24 different types of fruits and vegetables if they're also a product on your board. Now, if you don't have them on your Pinterest board already, you can select that URL option. And then what we're going to do in the next screen is copy and paste that URL. For this particular example, I wanted to pull from our website that reflects SEO because I don't know if you noticed, but it was an SEO image and you're going to rank higher. And so I want people to click on that and know that we offer SEO services. So when I enter the URL for our SEO services page, these are the images that come up. Now the images here are limited based on what's on the back end of the website. So if I want a different selection here, then I need to go to my website and add the pictures there. Otherwise, I just have to pick from what's here. And so for this particular page, I picked this little listing because to me that reflected ranking. We're talking about SEO in this particular pin. You'll click that picture that you want to represent for that product. It'll take you to this option to keep adding those, again, up to 24. For this particular post, I just did one. So after you save your progress there, you'll then go back to your pin. You'll see that the product is tagged here. So again, it's just another layer and level that allows users to dig into. I finished optimizing the pin. I went through the same process of putting it on the board and then publishing. And then this isn't that exact pin because that was just for a sample purpose, but this is what it actually looks like in real life. So this was that pin from earlier. I tagged a branding product service in that particular post. And so when somebody clicked on that pin, this is just the bottom screenshot of it, right below it, it allows the viewer to see more information about my particular business and my services, and particularly the tagged product or service that I put into that pin. Here's a little bit better example of that. This is a meat company that tagged their products. You can see these visuals are really amazing. They're very dynamic, eye-catching, looks delicious. All the information is optimized. And then I can keep looking through other products as well because they've tagged those products. So again, you can see that by optimizing all these different components of these pins, you're just giving shoppers and users a better experience and more opportunities to be enticed by what you have to offer. Now, to save from the website, again, you click on those create, go to that plus sign down there, and instead of create a pin, you'll save the website. You literally copy and paste the URL here. You'll hit enter. And then again, it does the same thing that we just kind of saw with the product tagging, but it'll bring up whatever images are associated with that particular URL that you just saved, that you just wanted to save from. These are the options. This particular post, let's say the branding identity, I'm using that same blog post. And so you can see the difference and compare the two types of pens. One, if I'm just creating the original pen versus the same exact URL, but saving it directly from the website. So you'll see that these are my options for photos. I'm going to pick this one that seems to be probably the most relevant. And then I'm pulling, select it. I pick the board or create the new board. And then it creates the pin. So this, again, from the website, it just pulls all of the information from that URL. So a few less steps for actually creating the pin. But I still like to go in and further optimize. So those three little buttons that are infamous for editing, open that pin, go here, and then you want to make sure that you've done all of the optimizing that we've already talked about. So adding the title, the description. Now, noting that you can only make these kinds of edits if it's coming from your own business website that's associated with Pinterest. If you're sharing from somebody else's website and you're sharing, maybe you find a really cool travel site and you want to share it to your Pinterest board, you can't edit those pins. You'll just share the URL, it'll create the pin and optimize it just based on the information that's available from that website. So just a quick reminder that you want to source pins that inspire. So that's the bottom line. Pinterest is the ultimate wish list. So people are using it to capture and collect and remind themselves of things that they love, that they want to buy, that they really, really wish they had, or they're hoping to get, or that they are going to get. So those pins and those boards can be everything from suggestions for the perfect business website to the prettiest summer sandals to the most amazing travel destinations to even picking out the best lawn care services. Pinterest is this way to cultivate that wish list and keep track of those things that you hope to invest in as a consumer. And so that's exactly why businesses should be on Pinterest, so that you can put your content in front of those people that are making those wish lists. A couple final tips. We're just about to wrap up right on the 12 o'clock mark. I highly recommend looking into Canva as a design option. So if you feel like you're just not sure you can create those visuals, Canva will do all the work for you. There's a free version, it's very intuitive. There's also a paid version, and I cannot speak highly enough to the impact of the Canva. And actually this whole presentation was done through Canva, including the designs for those pins that you saw. So I highly recommend it. Next, I would recommend checking out the Tailwind app. It's known for its scheduling capabilities as well as its analytic capabilities. So a great tool to implement. Also, Pinterest itself has a really great resource for best practices. I highly recommend delving into the back end of Pinterest help section. Lots of great resources there. And then a scheduling tool that I use is called Buffer, and it also has some really great resources. And I recommend checking out their article on Pinterest marketing tips. It just gives you some really creative ways to boost your performance, engage a little bit better, and to take everything that we've talked about today to the next level. Now, my final parting tip, I know I have 60 seconds left, the keyword hack. And this is probably one of my favorite things here is that we talked a little bit about, making sure that you add in those descriptions and those keywords and using, if you're just not quite sure what people are using, go to that little search bar in the top, start typing in, don't complete the typing the word. In this example, I started using email, M-A-R. I was going to finish with email marketing, but what happens is that Pinterest automatically generates the top searches and things that are happening on Pinterest. And so all of a sudden I have a list of 7 or 8 things right here that I can create blog posts about, that I could then pin to a board, that I could then create a board about. So these topics here are things that people are doing right in Pinterest that that they're actively searching for at this time, that you can create content around and help yourself be found. So that's my takeaway keyword hack. Again, and you can use that actually even beyond Pinterest, use it for email blast or a Facebook post or on your website. These keywords have a lot of power. So on that note, thank you so much. I hope that there were at least a few takeaways and it wasn't too overwhelming. And I'd love to follow up with any questions that you might have if you leave them in the chat, and I'll email with more specifics.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you everyone for joining us. It is 12, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time. If you need to jump off, if you have a minute to stick around. We really only have like 2 questions that I was unable to answer in the chat. And one of them was their Pinterest page is linked to their Shopify store so that the shop listings that Pinterest they have the shop listing that Pinterest has imported. But some of the shop pins have imported the wrong picture. And since they can't edit the picture, should they just delete the pins and hope that it reloads with the correct picture? Or do you know if there's another solution?
Yeah, I think if there's a disconnect between the 2 integrations, I would start with on the Shopify end, because typically that's where we see the biggest issue. So it might be a quick call to a Shopify rep just to see if they can double check that. But then definitely deleting and re-adding to see if that fixes the connection. Because the worst thing is to have the wrong picture with the pin and then have an unhappy customer who thought they were getting one thing and then get another thing.
Yeah, the automation is like the point. So
yes,
it's not automating.
Yeah. Exactly. So, and hopefully Shopify will be able to get to the bottom of that. I suspect that that's where the error is originating. But start there, and then go from there.
Thank you. And then the only other question that I wasn't 100% on was, can you share boards and pins between your personal account and your business account? I was saying, I think that you would have to manually send something from your personal page to your business page and then repost it again. But is there another way?
So there, when you're logged into your Pinterest personal account or you're logged into your business account, you're just acting as that particular profile. They're completely separate. But what you can do is you can share to a different profile. So from your personal one, you can send a pin or send a board over or share it. Or if you're on your business profile and you had something on your personal account that you want to just repin, you just repin it to your board, because as your business, you'll be able to actually see your personal and vice versa.
That's true. And it probably helps with engagement all around, because it seems like you're not a robot.
Yes, exactly. Well, and it does. So if you're personally sharing your business pins on your personal profile, it gives your business a little bit of a boost and it shows some engagement. So you can actually, kind of give yourself a little boost there by re-engaging with yourself.
Awesome. Well, all of the other questions I think I answered in the chat, so we may have saved ourselves that, but you will receive a follow-up email from me regardless that will have the slides as well as a link to the recording. So if you had anything you wanted to rewind and check in on, you can do that. Otherwise, everyone is just saying thank you and how wonderful and helpful this was in the chat. So again, thank you so much, Jenny.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So if you are not set up with a business advisor with the Maine SBDC, all of our contact information will be in my follow-up email. We provide no cost confidential business advising and help with any small business needs you may have. And currently we do have some special contractors who are helping to answer specific questions, just like Jenny. So if you had any marketing specific questions, you could talk to your business advisor about setting up a session to talk with Jenny further about those things. And like I said, all of that contact information will be in my follow-up email. Otherwise, have a lovely rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Okay, thank you.